Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Kathy and I for this July 4th edition of our Astrology and Politics thing. And this time we're going to do a bit different. We're going to do a little bit of a review of where we were all at when we started and what's happened since, and then we're going to have a look forward. But first of all, I'm Louise Edington, the Cosmic Owl. I am Cosmic Owl Astrology everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. And my website is louiseedington.com. And I am running my 7th Venus retrograde class this coming October. And it's a significant one for the USA. So I'm going to mention it. So if you're interested in it, go and have a look at my website. So I've already got 30 people signed up. So there we go.
Whoa.
But it's ages away. But it's huge for the USA, this Venus retrograde. So, and we'll talk about that more in a minute.
Hey, I'm Kathy Beal. On YouTube, I've got the Professional Aquarian channel. My website is empowermentunlimited.net. And both my YouTube channel and my website have weekly, monthly, and new and full moon forecasts. I also have a Patreon, patreon.com/Kathy Beal, which right now has a piece that you can buy as a standalone called Barbo's Basket and You, and it's about the big configuration in the middle of July. And in addition to talking in general terms about what it's doing for people, it breaks down for people who have Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto in the first like up to 7 degrees of each sign. It breaks down how it's affecting those people, and it has the years when the planets were in those placements. And even if it's not affecting you, there's bound to be somebody you know, especially if you have younger people in your life, that this is an issue for. So that's something you can find. I also have a group on Facebook called the Astro Insight Lounge, where we discuss. It's a private group. You have to apply to get into it, and we discuss where you see astrology actually playing out. And it's reached the point where I am no longer the only person posting. People are in there now who are catching the correlations between outer events. Oh, and we also have a lot of really stupid sun sign memes just to make it fun.
Yes, I like that. I've said before, it's really the only Facebook group I play in at all. And funnily enough, I have my Pluto's at 6 Virgo, but my MC is 6 Scorpio and my IC is 6 Taurus. So, and I have a few things at 7 degrees too. So it's hit the second basket is going to hit me hugely. Yeah. And I can feel it already, to be quite honest.
I'm in the thick of it myself.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not going to talk about where it's going because that would be it's yet to unfold, I think. The big transformations. Anyway, where do we want to start? Shall we just talk about why we started it first?
Do you want me to do the news roundup, or do you want to not?
Yeah, well, let's do it. Let's just very quickly remind people, or maybe people who've come later, why we started it. If that's all right.
Please go right ahead. Why are we doing this?
We're kind of officially part of the, what was it called, the 4 a.m. club or the 3 a.m. club?
There have many different labels for it. Yeah, 4 a.m. club is the label that has stuck.
Mm-hmm. That one stuck. Except I didn't sleep at all. But on the election night, there were many kind of people who either woke up early and saw the results, or like me, didn't sleep as the night went on. And we knew that the certain apparent occupant of the Oval Office right now had not won. And we just knew. And so we decided to start doing this and start looking at the astrology of it all. And from my perspective, over that period since we did the first one in November of 2024, I've learned so much more about the cycles of the USA and all things like that. So we've added all these things since. But a lot of what we talked about has over time showed up in the astrology, which is what Kathy's, sorry, in the news, which is what Kathy's
Hmm.
going to talk about. It may not have happened as fast as we kind of all hoped, but Kairos time, cosmic time. What about you? Why did you?
It was a calling. I'll
Yeah.
be honest, the night before the election, I had a dream where I was talking to Kamala Harris in the White House. It was a
Mm,
vivid dream. She was in the Oval Office, and I thought, what?
mm,
What is this about? And then I woke up between 3 and 4 the next day, like, this does not feel right. I had a similar, this doesn't feel like the right reality
mm,
4 years, no, no, years earlier, not 4 years
mm.
earlier, but 8 years earlier. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
So there's been something that's been,
Mm,
and anyway, so Louise suggested that we do this. We had a collaborator for a while, and we were doing them every 2 weeks, which was insane. But to me, it felt like a calling. And then after the inauguration, we scaled back to once a week, which we have basically kept up with.
mm,
And that's an incredible output. There are other people who've been saying things, but we have been pretty consistently on
mm,
it regularly, and we both have pretty strong placements in Sagittarius in different ways, and it feels like this is what we are supposed to do. There's a
yeah.
teaching element to it.
Hmm. There is. And we were called Blue Anon and Blue MAGA at first, but do you know when I knew that, because I thought she won. Well, I thought she was going to win. I still think she won. But anyway, and it's not really about the person, but the moment I knew that something was not right was when the first bomb scare happened in Georgia. And there was over 200 bomb scares, all in, swing precincts, shall we say, which is
Hmm.
suspicious on its own, right?
Hmm.
So that was the minute, and I just was like, no, this is not right. Anyway, so we've kept going, and I hope you've all learned something along the way. I've learned a lot about the US and US history, even though I actually studied it in college in England. Kathy obviously was brought up here, so she probably knows a lot more than I about the history.
I've
So,
learned more too.
but we're going to have a bit of a recap today. So let's do the news.
All right, every week I look at how the news has played out. The astrology, and last week was particularly juicy in a lot of ways. All right, so things I want you to be thinking about: Jupiter, which expands everything, moved into Leo, very aggrandizing, and squared, which is a challenging aspect. Chiron, which has just moved into Taurus, money, resources, while Mercury retrograde in the sign of Cancer is like an overarching thing for this. So, the online news outlet Not Us reviewed financial filings by Kash Patel and determined that he failed to properly disclose a six-figure purchase of stock in a Bitcoin fueled business intelligence and mobile software company that has contracted with the Department of Justice. So there's some money self-dealing. Federal ethics filings show that Trump's accounts bought up to 5 million in a taser maker called Axon. And 2 weeks later, ICE sought a $220 million government contract for stun guns with specifications that point to Axon. Also, Trump has reported 1.4 billion in crypto earnings. And keep in mind that Mercury retrograde is going over his Venus and Saturn, which are at Saturn's at 23, Venus is at 25 Cancer. So Mercury retrograde is going over that, and that Mars last weekend, Mars at the very, very end of Taurus sextiled Jupiter, expanding, but it also squared his ascendant. So there was like something coming forward, and we're going to see a whole lot more about that, including this. The House Dems have released a report that consultants tied to Trump may have engaged in financial fraud by tricking donors who wanted to support the nation's bipartisan 250th anniversary committee. and funneling the money instead to America 250, which is this Trump-backed thing. Uh, yeah.
Mm.
And it came out today, Talking Points memo has determined that the event organizer for America 250 is the same company that organized the rally on the Ellipse on January 6th. Both of those were no bid contract awards, meaning
Mhm.
it
I
wasn't
know.
competitive bidding. Some Mercury retrograde info for you. Remember that the Department of Justice is prosecuting an attorney who took the Jack Smith reports that Aileen Cannon had sealed, that she sent them to herself by email in PDFs with like culinary names attached to it. So she's being prosecuted. Well, the DOJ emailed one of the volumes of that report to her attorneys. The DOJ released the report that was sealed. Just let that sit, okay? Now, the under legal rules, the attorney who got something that wasn't supposed to be sent is supposed to return it and destroy all copies. But interestingly, now Jack Smith has shown up in
Mm.
a regular media have talking. So this is an issue. It's alive. Also, there was this weird leak or this weird statement by Nina Totenberg, very long-standing NPR Supreme Court reporter. Right after the session was over, she announced that Alito was retiring and then immediately retracted it.
Mm.
And there's all kinds of scuttlebutt that Judge Cannon's in the pipeline. We'll see. Um, Jupiter in Leo moving into a trine to Neptune, which is unhinged, can be, and we have evidence of the Mad King.
Ugh.
Trump had a conversation with a hologram of Teddy Roosevelt and asked him questions. And then he talked to reporters about his conversation with Teddy Roosevelt, an AI generated image.
Wow.
Also, in another speech to reporters, he said he'd have a three-way with his sons and that he should award his sons the Medal of Freedom for hunting.
Mm.
Jupiter in an opportunity, no, Jupiter trining Neptune, the king is mad. Jupiter in Leo opposing Pluto, a couple of really extreme examples of this. The Skywalk, a couple that has a series called Skywalkers. They scaled to the top of the Empire State Building and they unfurled a flag that said, when the power of love beats the love of power, the world knows peace. That's a quote from Jimi Hendrix, who's having his Uranus return right now. And
Oh.
I thank Meg Duggan for posting this one in the Astro Insight Lounge, the Hendrix connection. Anyway, they get up there to the top. The man proposes to the woman, and then they both get arrested.
Mhm.
Uh, so that's one Jupiter opposing Pluto. On the other extreme, we have a let them eat cake moment from Representative Troy Nails of Texas. And he is, of course, Republican. And he said, quote, affordability? What are you talking about? I'm going to get me a couple of big lobster tails. I'm going to get me some nice ribeye. Maybe the 60% of Americans don't work as hard as I do. Okay.
Mhm.
Also, fitting the Jupiter-Pluto opposition, a federal court has permanently barred Trump from withholding any funding for the Gateway Tunnel project between New York and New Jersey, which has been in the works for years and will take care of commuting issues in a major commerce corridor in the Northeast. Lots of Supreme Court action worth noting and fitting all of this. The Supreme Court struck down the executive order on birthright citizenship, although it did it in somewhat squirrely
Mm.
voting. And so the administration's response is that they want to bar pregnant women from entering the country to get rid of birth tourism. We'll see how that goes. The in the Jupiter Chiron dealing with money. SCOTUS has further loosened campaign funding restrictions. It struck down a federal law that limited the amount of money that political parties can spend in coordination with a candidate for office. This lawsuit was brought by the RNC, and one of the other plaintiffs was J.D. Vance as senator.
Mhm.
The SCOTUS upheld a law banning trans athletes from women's sports. Um, and more importantly, it declined to hear E. Jean Carroll, Trump's appeal of E. Jean Carroll's judgment against him. His attorneys asked her attorneys to please delay collecting the judgment so they can appeal again. And you can guess what her attorney's response
Like,
to that was. This has been, I think the judgment has been in place for like 5 years, a
oh
very
yeah,
long.
yeah.
And that's Mercury retrograde going over his Venus Saturn. Also, with Mercury retrograde going over his Venus Saturn, a woman has resurfaced. Louise found this one. Former Miss Switzerland has resurfaced, renewing her allegations of sexual assault
Mm.
by you know who. Okay, so more
There's
women to the fore.
also
Yeah.
Katie Fang. Did you mention
Oh,
that?
that's I've got another section. She's
Oh,
up.
sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. No,
Hmm.
no, no, but that's important. Um,
Mm.
the SCOTUS also upheld a state
Mm.
law allowing mail-in ballots to be counted if they're postmarked by election day. And now we have a lot of people saying how illegal that is. That is what the law has
Mm.
been forever and ever, world without
Yeah.
end. And a federal court has stepped in and has barred the USPS from uh, instituting the restrictions that you know who wants on.
Mm.
They want to like not deliver mail-in ballots in states that don't hand over the voter information, and a federal court has said nope, that doesn't work.
Wow.
Um, this is all kinds of things. I'm going to say this is also Uranus squaring the nodes. The UK may intervene in the Paramount Warner Brothers merger, which has been ongoing.
Mm.
Also, Anderson Cooper, who left CBS's 60 Minutes because of what Barry Weiss was doing there, has said that if this merger goes through and she's put in charge of CNN, he won't work for her there. All right, lots of Mars activity. Okay, Mars sextile Jupiter, and when they were both in the very final degree of the sign, and then he moved into Gemini. Here we go.
Mm.
Army chaplains have been given 90 days notice to strip rank insignia from their uniforms. Um,
Yes.
a court granted an injunction stopping the Pentagon from forcing journalists to have a government escort at all times while inside the building. This one has Mercury square Eris in it as well. Major Jason Watson, still in active duty and in uniform, repeated his oath of office on the steps of the Capitol in the company of Representative Al Green from Texas. And then he called for the impeachment, conviction, and removal of Trump and Vance for a sequence of impeachable offenses that I believe every single one of you would agree with. Al Green
Mhm.
left during the talk, and then Major Watson was arrested, and the
Yeah. Oh.
I think that's because you can only do this if you're in the company of someone from Congress. I don't think it's a given. I have not seen that he's being court-martialed. I would not be surprised if they try
Mm.
that. But I also understand that he's not being charged. He was arrested, but I understand he's not being charged. Follow this one.
Mm.
Um, Mercury retrograde, more could come.
Mhm.
A top U.S. general, the top U.S. general for Europe and Africa, just resigned after a clash with Hegseth. Federal
Mm.
court has certified transgender troops as a class, paving the way for them to sue the administration for its transgender military ban, which has been struck down by a federal court. So more to come from that. A few more things. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, the three outermost planets, are moving toward a collaboration. They're moving toward, I mean, they are actually communicating quite a bit with each other in fire and air. The Society of Saint, so we're going to look at the religious aspect of Neptune with this, and then
Mm.
Jupiter moving into place as well. Power issues. The Society of St. Pius consecrated bishops without the Pope's consent. And the
Oh,
Vatican has declared that this society has formally broken from the church and it has excommunicated its bishops and priests and
whew.
says that everybody who really follows them is also in danger of being excommunicated. They acted on it really, really quickly. Apparently, there has been
Wow.
a brewing controversy here, but
Missed
big
that one.
stuff happens with the church and breakaway when Pluto transits are really historically part of that.
Mm.
A federal judge has ordered Musk to testify under oath in two cases where he is accused of defrauding voters in swing states before the 2024 election. Hmm. Hmm.
Mm.
Okay. Uh, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson say they are going to help start a new political party. The Onion has completed its takeover of InfoWars and has launched its own broadcast channel. The Onion also earlier changed all of its the InfoWars branding to rainbow colored. And they've been giving money to the Sandy Hook families. They got this in Alex Jones's bankruptcy. They bought InfoWars from him, and he was supposed to pay the Sandy Hook families an enormous amount for having defamed them by saying that this did not happen. And the Onion is following through, and they're giving money to them. So that's
Yes.
something that's important to you. Go buy Onion merch.
Hmm.
More things, more things. The former CIA director, John Brennan, is suing the Trump administration to order the government to preserve records. He will need to establish that the prosecution is a vindictive one if he gets invited. So he's making a preemptive strike here. Um, More Neptune is involved here. The U.S. Attorney for D.C. got an indictment against the former Olympian bicyclist who touched the reflecting pool. She got an indictment against him. I've
Oh,
seen video footage. His hand was in the water for like 10 seconds.
yeah.
And so there's video footage that is going to turn this case into the next version of her, Jean Pirro's having gotten an indictment against a guy who threw a sandwich at a police officer, and that was dismissed. I suspect this one
Yes.
will also be dismissed. Mercury squaring Eris. Trump told reporters that Bill Pulte, his acting director of national intelligence, has his blessing to declassify about anything he wants, and particularly including material tied to the 2020 election. And the FBI is already investigating what happened in Georgia. How many times has this been litigated? And
Mm.
yet, taxpayer money going to that yet again. Two more things. Katie Fang last week got an order against the DOJ enforcing, requiring them to redact and release Epstein files in accordance with the Transparency Act that Trump signed. The deadline was this week. They missed the deadline.
Two days ago. Yeah.
They're asking for 2 more months.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to get it.
They're just basically refusing to.
Yep. And one more thing. This is also Mercury square Eris plus Chiron sextile the North Node, like we're healing something and moving into the next way we're supposed to be. Thomas Massie introduced a resolution that the House overwhelmingly passed, and we said he had a lot more to do, even though he lost his election. The House overwhelmingly passed directing the House Committee on Ethics and the Office of Congressional Workplace Rights to
Mhm.
publicly release the records of lawmakers who used taxpayer funds to settle sexual misconduct allegations. There's a 60-day timeline to compile and release this data.
Love it.
There we go.
Oh, that was a
I am
lot.
done.
But
It was a lot. Yes.
but to my mind, it just all of that just shows that, people are fighting back and changing as we've long said they will do, and that things are being revealed more and more. Yes, they are still doing Anyway, so a couple of things. I think we'll look back first, and I think we'll look back at a couple, and we're probably just going to talk about them. So, Kathy and I both look back at both the election day chart and the inauguration day chart, and we noticed a couple of things. But it's really interesting that a lot of it was to do with the moon's nodes, and and we both used. I used the true calculation. Kathy uses the mean calculation, and they differ quite often, but both worked. So first one was on election day. The nodes true calculation were at 6 degrees Libra south node, 6 degrees Aries north node, and 4 degrees for the mean calculation. We've got these two baskets coming up, right? And the first one's at 4 degrees, and the second one next June is at 6 degrees. And so these are really hot degrees that are being activated over and over again. And so, I think things that were kind of set in motion on that election day are going to radically shift with these baskets. Would you
Oh
agree?
yeah, they're being rewired.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I will say that we talked a little bit about this before we turned the cameras on, and it's kind of startling the connections each of these charts
Oh,
have embedded in them to developments going on now. So it like there were
mm-hmm.
seeds, there were conditions that are now, and I keep using the word, being rewired into something
Mm-hmm.
vastly, vastly different.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because I look back even before we started all this and before I brought in more things, I had long been saying, I just think after all this, the US Constitution is going to be rewritten or rewired. And people are starting to say it, right?
Hmm. Oh yeah, oh
Because
yeah.
yeah, because he's obviously or they, whatever, have shown where the holes in the Constitution are, where, it could be rigged in their favour. The other thing on election day that, because I used the asteroids, that I noticed that was that Vesta, which is the state, asteroid Vesta, other things as well, but it is the state, was literally on the transiting south node. It was at 4 degrees, so the mean node was at 4 degrees, but the true node was at 6 degrees. So either way, it was conjunct. The south node, the state, was bound to kind of collapse in some ways, I think, because it was on the
Release.
south node. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I would
So,
also like, there are a couple of things
mm,
I'd like to point out about it. One of them was at at those times,
mm,
so end of 2024, beginning of 2025, the three outermost planets were traveling roughly in the same kind of relationship that they're in now, but they were all finishing up long cycles in earth and water, basically mud, and they were moving into um, breaking down, roto-rootering,
mm-hmm.
collapsing, causing things to fall apart, shattering institutions and norms and really solid things that we had built a lot
Yeah.
of the country and our lives on.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's really different. Now we're moving into a very, very different way of doing things. So we are at the moment that Louise and I are talking, we're at the brink of the new way of doing things.
Yeah, we are. And one other thing on the election day, asteroid Juno, which is contracts, um, and also representing women and children in many ways, was at 0 Scorpio, where on October the 23rd coming up, we have the last Venus star point or cazimi of the Sun and Venus, the last Scorpio conjunction in our lifetimes before it shifts permanently into Libra. Because I do that Venus retrograde class, I'm very aware of all those points, called the Venus Star Point by Ariel Gutman. So that point was set in stone as well, and that was in the third house of communities and information,
And
and it
votes.
just yes, and a less because this would have been more common, but the sun was at 13 Scorpio. It would always be around there on election day in Scorpio, but on that day it was 13 Scorpio, so it was trine the US 13-degree Cancer sun. So yeah, there
And
was a
another
lot of mhm.
another reason that is important is that the Mercury retrograde coming this fall, right after the Venus
Mhm,
retrograde starts, so the
mhm,
second half of October and then
mhm,
into November, the Mercury retrograde is going to go over the
mhm.
Sun in Scorpio in the third house of communication and,
It
let me say it
will.
again, the votes
And I will
from
be
that
going
chart.
over those degrees and dates when we have a bit of a look ahead. So, did I mention that those conjunct the South Node in the election day chart with Vesta was
Yes.
in was in that it was in the second house of
Ah,
our values, our self-worth, our self-esteem. American values have been, basically gone down the drain, which is the South Node in many ways. So.
and resources. What's
Mhm,
happened with the
mhm,
resources for our country? Well, they're
mhm.
being used for private benefit in a truly
Yes.
extreme way.
Yep. Yep. So that's was what was kind of set in motion on that day, and it's all been coming to light. So then we also looked at back at the inauguration day charts, and because I work a lot with the moon's nodes, I noticed that the true calculation again had just moved back into from Aries Libra into Virgo and Pisces. They were just about to move if you use the mean calculation. So either way, the nodes were changing signs, which is always a big deal. And that's big now because the nodes on the 27th of July coming up are going to leave Virgo and Pisces, and things are going to start to shift again. So, that whole period since that inauguration day, we've had all the eclipses in Virgo and Pisces. And I always think of Virgo as doing the right thing. In this case, the South Node, or doing good work, meaningful work. The South Node in Virgo has been shown where they're not doing the right thing, I think, as well. Anyway,
Well,
there's a
that
lot of
also
problems.
fits the immigration issues and
Oh,
what's
it
been,
does.
yeah, looking at boundaries and
Mm-hmm.
borders and the number of the health issues and people who have been hurt. But
Yeah.
another way of looking at what Louise has just explained
Mm.
is we're finishing a cycle that started on on the inauguration day. So a
Yeah.
cycle from inauguration day is closing down and moving into another cycle at the
Yeah.
end of this month after a whole bunch of other stuff
Hmm.
happens. So,
Definitely. And I can't help noticing as well, we talked about this 6 degree thing, and I did a whole video with a friend and colleague, Dawn Hild, on all these 6 degree activations, because the second basket next year is at 6 degrees. Well, Vesta was at 6 Scorpio on inauguration day. So anything that, is at 4 or 6 degrees is activated in a big way. So was there anything else that shifted from the
uh,
inauguration day?
maybe not shifted, but was embedded in it.
Well, yeah.
Okay, on inauguration day, Mars, planet of action, also the
Mm-hmm.
military, in the sign of Cancer, was in the third house of
Mm-hmm.
information. Let me just say, I'll say it again, votes. And also social media and stuff. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Mars was at a degree 24 Cancer that is right smack between somebody's Saturn at 23 Cancer and Venus at 25 Cancer, and the Mercury retrograde is going over this now. So there may
And the
be
and the
information about his
last
family. Yep.
yeah, and the
Women.
last Jupiter retrograde stationed just a degree away from that Mars too, and things have been coming to light. I also noticed actually that it was making a lovely water trine to Juno again. Juno in Scorpio in the seventh house in the inauguration chart. So contracts with other people, like
Hmm.
Elon Musk, maybe.
Hmm. Like no
Mhm.
bid contracts. Hmm.
Yes, all of those as well.
And that is coming out now with the Mercury retrograde going over this area after Jupiter's retrograde like
Mhm.
mushroomed all these things. And now we've got,
Yeah,
let's go look at it happening.
yeah. And then we're going to have the Venus and Mercury retrograde, which is in Scorpio. So we've seen a lot of Scorpio being activated there too. A couple of other things that have happened since is the IC in the US chart is at 1 degree of Aries. We had on March 22nd last year, not long after the inauguration, of course, we had a Venus retrograde conjunction with the Sun at 2 degrees Aries, right on the bottom of the chart. And that's usually the basis of security or things that are hidden as well, the basis of the chart. And then we had the Saturn Neptune conjunction in February of this year at 0 Aries, right on the bottom of that chart. So all of these things have started bringing things to light and started to show the collapse of our institutions that were unstable. They were not built on. It was built on gentleman's agreement, really, not not solid. You know, this is how it's going to
Well,
stay.
also, there are enforcement mechanisms in place. They are not being used
Well, yeah,
because the people who are supposed to do something about it keep going on vacation
yes,
instead of doing something about it. That's
mm,
one reason. Also, that
yeah.
Saturn Neptune conjunction on the IC is kind of dissolving what we thought
Mhm,
and it has a lot to do with the military, the U.S. military no longer being the driving force on the planet.
yeah, yeah. And so when I say there are mechanisms, they've shown how you can manipulate it. So you don't
Or
have to
ignore them.
use those. You can just ignore the mechanisms, like they've ignored Katie Fang's court order for releasing the unredacted documents. They just go, no, not doing it. And nobody does
Ignored
anything about it.
the
Yeah,
law that they passed and that he signed. Oh,
I
gee,
know.
no. How
It's
inconvenient.
wild. It's just wild. So anything else we want to look back at? We're just really we just wanted to point out that, we've been tracking all those things since, and everything we kind of felt was coming at least and predicted. When I don't see myself as a real predictive astrologer, but it's gradually been coming to light. So mhm.
The February, uh, there was an eclipse at the end of Aquarius in the middle of February this year, right before the
Mm,
Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And its effects play out for about 6 months. And right about the time that we're hitting okay, now it's time for something new to happen, is when the nodes are moving back. So we've
mhm,
already had some things seeded, and that eclipse on February 17th was
mhm,
very, very close to the moon in the Declaration of Independence chart, which is the people,
mhm,
we the people. So there was something that was rebooting, setting a new operating system in place. And I would just remind everyone how in recent weeks we have seen instance after instance of people for absolutely non-political reasons being in the streets and celebrating with each other.
oh yes, indeed.
And
So
for the FIFA people, the World Cup people who've been coming to the US have been interacting with ordinary Americans. And this has been some kind of diplomatic mission because people from other countries are having extraordinarily positive experiences with the people who live here, as opposed to what the
mhm,
government is doing.
yeah, definitely. So with the US as a whole, I'd just like to quickly just mention that, we've heard a lot about the US Pluto return. That was at 27 degrees Capricorn. But the US has also been through a Neptune opposition to its 22 degrees Virgo Neptune. It's also been through a Chiron return, where the US Chiron is at 20 Aries. It's also having Saturn, another Saturn opposition to its 14 degrees Saturn um, right now, pretty much, but it's going to kind of activate over and over. There was something else it's had. But also, I'm going to mention fixed star Altair briefly,
Hmm.
thanks to Andrew Smith. Fixed stars move from our perspective about a degree every 72 years. Fixed star Altair was at 27 degrees, well, actually 28 degrees Capricorn, conjunct Pluto in the Sibley chart, the 1776 chart, but it's now in Aquarius, and it's been in Aquarius for a while. So, and Pluto has moved into Aquarius, and we keep having other things happening at early Aquarius. It's at 2 Aquarius right now. And so that's a big change from Capricorn, these more, whatever you want to call them, kind of patriarchal kind of structures that the country was set up as, because it was created by, white slave owners, basically, but by their ideals, really. And Altair is ideals. Well, now it's shifted and it's changing, and the ideals just really don't fit the people anymore, right? That's how I see it. Yeah.
There's a bigger definition of the people now.
Yes. Yeah. And Regulus as well, fixed star Regulus was at 26 Leo in 1776, and that's now at 0 Virgo and will be activated by the South Node very shortly. And Venus is also going to join them as well, women rising up again, and and things going down the drain. So that's a lot, but just to say, those fixed stars really do add something to the big changes that are coming, particularly in the USA. Yeah. Anything you want to mention
Well, I
looking back
do.
before we go forward?
Well, let me throw a little history in. I
Mm,
think this might be an appropriate place for it. So,
mm,
Louise and I have both written and spoken a lot about the big configuration, and a lot of people are talking about it, that
mm,
happens from about July 15th to July 25th,
mm,
when the three outermost planets and then Jupiter all connect with each other at 4 degrees of fire and air. And they're all in the early degrees of their signs, which is still very new,
mm,
raw energy. And when Jupiter gets into the mix, which is exact on the 20th,
mhm,
but we're feeling this already, and it's just going to be again. I just see energy going, and
mhm.
okay. So things that are important to know: we haven't had a configuration of these exact bodies in this exact relationship, but three of them have been in something similar.
Mm,
And the year I want to point everyone to is 1789. Now, I've talked about this a lot. Other astrologers have as well. In 1789, at slightly different degrees, Jupiter and Pluto were opposed. Pluto in Aquarius was very actively doing stuff with the American Revolution and with the French Revolution and various other things all over the planet. But when Jupiter and Pluto opposed Neptune, Uranus is out of the picture. Neptune was in Libra in communication with them. Libra is a point that, except for a fleeting day, isn't part of this configuration. Now,
yeah.
what happened then? In the US in 1789, well, in the US and in France, several really big events occurred that moved toward democratic systems. And in the US in particular, there were a number of firsts and things that set up institutions the way the government was going to run, which are now up for a new way of doing things. One of them was the Constitution went into effect. We had our first president. The Treasury was founded. Federal courts were founded. The Department of War, it was called that then, was founded. We had our first Secretary of State. There's the Libra aspect of things. So that 1789, which we're echoing now, had the beginnings of these various things. Oh, one other. Congress started to consider changes to the Constitution that in later years were adopted as the Bill of Rights. In
Mhm.
France, really important things. Most people know about the storming of the Bastille that happened in 1789 when political prisoners were freed from this prison in Paris. The National Assembly abolished feudalism, so some income redistribution, the creation of the middle class was part of what came out of this.
Mhm.
A piece called the Declaration of the Rights of Man was published. That's a foundational guide. It's like the foundational document for the motion of participatory democracy. And there were a lot of things that happened. The other one, which there hasn't been, I have not read about this until recently. There was an event involving, I've read 7,000, I've read 10,000 women in Paris who decided that the way they were going to deal with grain prices making bread very scarce was they're going to take up implements and march 12 miles to Versailles. They got an audience with the king. They weren't happy with what he said, so some of them stormed the palace that evening, and the royal family had to flee. So this was a pivotal moment in the toppling of the monarchy. So all of these things are like resonant, reverberating, echoing in what is going on now.
Yeah.
And at this point in the U.S., we have uh, Secretary of State. Well, our foreign policy is being handled by private individuals who have intense business interests in what they're doing. The Department of War is now the Department of War again, and it's firing anybody who has experience or, heaven forbid, isn't a Christian nationalist. Or white guy at least.
Yes.
And all these other things are up for. This is all presaging what
Mm.
Louise has already hinted at. We're moving into a phase where we're going to address and rework all of this, and it's going to be
Mhm.
in a much more egalitarian way because Saturn and Neptune meeting in at the very first degree of the zodiac in February was a although we haven't had that in recorded history, pretty much every time Saturn and Neptune have a conjunction in whatever sign, politics moves towards something more progressive. So
Yeah.
we're rewiring something more progressive, meaning involving more everybody and not just the top, regardless of what
Yeah.
it looks like is going on right now.
Yeah.
End of lecture.
Oh, oh, God, my watch is speaking to me. Sorry about that. I don't know what triggered that one. But anyway, so we just want to give you some dates to kind of just don't hyper fixate on the exact dates because, I know Kathy mentioned the peak of this first basket. As far as I'm concerned, and I did a video for it looking at the whole of July, this Mars Uranus conjunction today is really kind of kicking it off big
It
time
is.
to my mind. So it's
Start
all
button.
month. Yeah, it's all months really. So and beyond. But anyway, but first before that, so we have the Mars Uranus conjunction today that everybody's going, ooh, scary. And it can be fireworks, literally, but it can also start radical change. Okay, so it can kick off the radical change. Anything about that today?
Whatever goes on over the 4th of July weekend and the days immediately after is activating and it's going to set in motion what we're going to start structuring in a very, very different way later this month
Mm,
that we'll address.
yeah. Yeah. But then I do think that the Venus moving into Virgo on July the 9th and then immediately conjuncting that fixed star Regulus at 0 Virgo and then the South Node at 0 Virgo and then Regulus and the South Node meeting for the first time since the fixed star moved into Virgo from our perspective at the end of 2011. I think that's really potent. I just, because 0 points are always potent, even if it's, I know the cardinal signs are called the world points, but it's a new beginning, it's alpha, omega. So, but also looking at the big picture, Venus is the one leading the way. Women, money, creation, all kinds of things. So she's the first to meet those two. Everything
And
else is moving towards it. Hmm.
the sign she's in is really important. A lot of people
Hmm.
say nasty things about Venus and Virgo. This is
Mm.
Earth Mother territory.
It really is.
This is
Mhm.
I have a plan. This is how do we
Mhm.
fix this? I mean, maybe there's some
Mhm.
criticism, but it's
Yeah.
looking at things from an evaluative viewpoint. And she's going to be trining, she's going to be flowing directly into Chiron and Taurus,
Mhm.
which and she rules Taurus. So there'll be
Mhm.
somebody going, how do we fix this? Let's look at what's happening to resources. Let's look at what's happening to women. Let's look at what's happening to money and the economy. And how do we fix this? Not, oh my God, the sky is falling. And women are going to be
Exactly.
very, very important for that. And this is going to ground us
Mm.
while Mercury continues to be retrograde in its most emo mode. Okay, so we'll be
Yeah.
all nostalgic and "Oh, I wish things were the way they were."
I've seen some of my friends posting, "Oh, we had such a nice life." I'm like, "Oh, stop it." Anyway.
Well, I've been listening to a lot of music from my teens and 20s. That's not a,
Yeah.
so what? But
Yeah.
so this Venus moving into Virgo and making all the contacts that Louise has detailed
Mm.
grounds us while other things are
Yes.
washing over us and making us
Yes.
filter everything through our emotions and
Mm.
almost acts as a distraction while the basket goes bzz and rewires everything, I
And I
think.
will, and I will point out as well that that Venus South Node Regulus conjunction at 0 Virgo is also a sextile to the 0 degree Scorpio Venus Cazimi that's coming up on October the 23rd during the Venus retrograde, the last Scorpio star point in our lifetime, as I've mentioned. And that is also the Venus star point return for the USA. When in 1776, that star point was just a shade more 1 degree because it always moves slightly back every cycle. So again, big deal. Venus as well. The Venus Cazimis with the sun are really potent. Hmm.
So I think that so whatever's going on
Mm.
early in July, we're going to
Mm.
revisit during the Venus
Mhm.
retrograde, and
Oh,
it's going to
yeah.
involve crimes and money and
Mhm.
survivors and things that someone
Mhm.
has been trying to bury, and a revisiting deeply about what do we really value. And
Yes,
important women from the past will ascend.
they will. Hmm. But before October, so we've had the Venus one, then we have the peak of the basket, which, is July the 19th to what dates did you give? Um,
Well, it starts on the 15th, but the really peak
yeah.
days are like the 19th, 20th, and 21st.
Yeah. So, and I think particularly when the moon is at 4 Libra, I think you pointed that out on
That's
your
on the
video.
19th. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the moon is at 4 degrees Scorpio on July the 21st and making an exact T square to the Jupiter Pluto opposition, which means it's an exact handle of the basket. So it's kind of carrying all the stuff and it's for Scorpio, activating what's coming in October. I'm just saying. The
Women,
people.
crimes, corruption,
Yeah.
grifting,
Secrets, hidden things.
women,
Hmm.
SA. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. It always comes up in Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The Me Too movement came back when Jupiter was going through Scorpio. Things like that.
I'll just
Okay.
add. one other
Mm,
thing here.
mm.
When Brett Kavanaugh was,
Oh,
when his hearings took place
mm,
and when he got appointed to the Supreme Court, and Dr. Christy Ford Brown had her testimony,
mm,
and Epstein actually gave information, gave advice on how to counter this.
mm.
Venus was in Scorpio. I have
It was.
always thought that there's a heavy, heavy Scorpio streak in what will actually eventually lead to his leaving the court. So there could be something really
Mhm.
important.
My Venus in Scorpio agrees.
Thank you.
Because we can also be very vengeful if we're hurt and stung, like these women have, and other people are the victims of. Anyway, or survivors, I'd rather prefer to say. But then on July the 27th, so we shift, so this whole month is huge. The nodes shift signs and move back in. So the North Node will be in Aquarius, and the South Node will be in Leo, the sign of kings, no more kings. And that's for about 19 months. They always spend about 19 months in the sign, and that, of course, will lead to the North Node being conjunct the moon of the USA. I'm sure I wrote that old date down, but I can't see it in my scrappy notes. But it very coming up very soon. So pulling us towards fighting for the people, for equality, for egalitarianism, for humanitarianism as well. So
Two things I'll add to that. When the nodes move back into Aquarius, Leo,
mm,
the North Node is going to cross over the February 17th solar eclipse at the end
mm-hmm,
of Aquarius. So something is going to come to the fore that we'll be experiencing during the nodal cycle of
mm-hmm,
for the next, what, 19 months or so,
yeah.
18 and 19 months. Additionally, this is going to touch off something that I left out of the news. And I think there will be something addressing, at least over this time, over this next year and a half, if not really quickly, that Supreme Court decision that overruled longstanding precedent and it says that the president can fire can fire people on the in
Mm,
executive agencies without congress for any reason, without cause.
yeah.
And one of the dissenting judges pointed out that this gives the president more power than the monarchy has in Britain. So I think there will be, and that's the king aspect of this. I think there will be, that's one of the things that's going to be addressed and reworked in this next period of
Mm,
time.
yeah. I also point out that the South Node in Leo will pass over the apparent occupant's ascendant and then his 12th house Mars, the releasing end of the nodes.
Hmm.
That doesn't bode well for him either.
Nope.
so, so that's a big shift, and of course that's starting a 19-month shift. But I think it's going to be palpable shift because
Hmm.
of what it activates, as we've mentioned. Then we have October. So Venus goes retrograde on. Oh, why are my notes so bad? I was like, oh, I
October
thought of
3rd.
this. Yes, October the 3rd till November the 13th. Venus goes retrograde at 8 degrees Scorpio and goes all the way back to 22 Libra, Venus guided um, sign. But then Mercury goes retrograde on October the 24th at 20 Scorpio and goes back to 5 Scorpio, but they both station direct on the same day, November the 13th, a reminder at 5 Scorpio and 22 Libra. Now, the two worked together last March with the Venus retrograde as well. Their degrees were more tightly aligned, but this is moving us from that Scorpio into Libra, the Venus one, because the Venus retrogrades and Cazimis and so on are going to be in Libra for well over 100 years. And so it's moving into Venusian territory. So this is kind of not only the Venus star point return for the USA, it's moving everything out of Scorpio into Libra.
Leaving the swamp.
Yes, draining the actual swamp, I'm going to say. Now, shall I just show that one picture
Oh,
that
go
I
right
have?
ahead. Go right ahead.
Because it's hard to describe without actually seeing it, right? So, uh, on October the 28th, well, I can't remember, that is a day when Venus has moved back into Libra, gets to 27 degrees of Libra, will be trine the USA's moon and square the USA's Pluto, and aspecting the transiting nodes. So I set it for the day that the North Node actually is conjunct the moon of the people in the USA chart in the third house. Venus is activating, flipping every part of it. So I think that's a huge activation as well.
So we're negotiating different ways of doing things, negotiating different
Mm-hmm.
ways of how we get along. I'd say maybe the arts play a big role. I will say
Mm-hmm.
women play a huge role. And
Justice as well, court.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And that's in the
Mm-hmm.
house of well, that's the house that rules Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Um anyone who's out there scared about the midterms, just put it in a box. Put your fear in a box.
Because
Just
look,
put it in a
this
box.
is this is right before the election,
Hmm.
right before the midterms, and the South Node as well by transit is about to cross where No More Kings Regulus was on in the ninth house of the courts as well. Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
echoing the populace's, other things showing the populace's inclination in this way, the moon on that day at 14 Gemini is
mm-hmm,
trining the US Saturn at 14 Libra.
mm-hmm. Which is also having its Saturn opposition on and off as well. But Vesta as well, so she's a bit involved too there because Vesta, the state, is opposing Saturn around that same time. I'm just noticing that Mercury's retrograde, of course, at that point as well. And the USA was born with a Mercury retrograde that is being activated right now. So, when people are born with the retrograde, it's like an aspect repeating. So, and Ceres, my lovely Ceres, is right there as well on the Mercury in the eighth house of secrets, corruption, all the things we've talked about.
What have our resources been used for?
Mm.
This
Ooh.
lineup to me bodes extraordinarily well for a new wave of or a new vibe
Mm.
in what elected officials are saying, what people are advocating for. Um, yeah. Yep,
Yeah,
yep, yep.
I totally agree. And look where the sun is as well. It's at the degree Mercury will station direct at on November the 13th. So this is kind of October the 28th, before the midterms. November the 13th, when Mercury and Venus start moving forward again, Venus will be coming morning star. So will Mercury, actually. They both do that morning star, evening star thing. They'll both be emerging from their retrogrades, taking action. So, mhm. Women, contracts, communication, news, things are going to start coming out fast, I think. Yeah.
And ways of doing things differently.
Mm,
Very, very, and yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And there could be a resurgence of with the moon being in the house of allies and open enemies,
Mm.
maybe other countries
Oh,
start
that one.
talking to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And slight,
Maybe.
because I set it for exactly this moment when the North Node was on here, just a little bit earlier on the day. It's right on the ascendant descendant for the chart.
Hmm.
So and it's moving towards the top of the chart, which is action again as well. Things start moving anyway. Um, you know, again, it's an activation day, but it's all saying to me that this Mercury and Venus retrograde period is really huge. And after November the 13th, change will start coming rapidly. Okay.
Yeah, I think the stalemate in federal government will stop all kinds of
Hmm.
things.
I
So
do.
looking at the big arc of what we've been talking about is the system that already was
Hmm.
cratering basically broke. It was broken. It had wrecking ball after wrecking ball and sticks of dynamite and God knows what blown into it, and we've had more and more and more coming to the surface, and
Mm.
the problems are staring everybody in the face. There's like not even hiding the grift going on at
Oh.
all. And we already have circumstances, new ways of doing things moving into position with a
Mm.
historical relevance to normal, like making power more across the board, and it's setting things up for that more and more and more. Now, there are, I will just throw in, and well, anyway, what Louise has been showing with this is we've got this unfolding process. It's
Mhm.
blossoming now. It'll blossom more next June when the
Mm.
basket recreates itself at 6 degrees. There's one more linkage among the three
Mm.
outer planets at 8 degrees in June of 2028. So we've got a multi-year blossoming, 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 the circuitry getting upgraded and upgraded and upgraded, but we're
Mhm.
already well into it now. I will
Mhm.
throw in someone I read, I'm sorry that I don't remember his name, really flipped out over Chiron being at 0 Taurus while this is all happening and screaming that we're all going to get these gut punches and it's not going to be um, as optimistic as everyone is saying. Chiron's not in this, it's not making the exact configuration. I don't
Mm.
see it as a factor. The economy is an undercurrent. The resource source problems are an undercurrent,
Mm.
but we've already got something. First off, Venus is going to be dealing with that. The people will be dealing with that. Women,
Mm.
our values, community,
Mhm.
interactions with folks will be figuring out what to do with it. But more importantly, the new system has the wiring's been in place and now it just gets turned on and it's not turning off.
No.
And this was foreseen as a complete restructuring of human existence, and I don't see how it's anything but that.
And I've that second basket is exact June the 8th. That's actually the day of Chiron's own first Chiron return. And anybody that's been through a Chiron, it was discovered in 77, right? So, Chiron return is both kind of looking at the wounds, but it's bringing them medicine as well.
Hmm.
So I don't know why anybody would freak out about Chiron being in Taurus. We might get a little bit more pain before that, June the 8th, but that second basket is stunning. And a big reason for it as well is that Pluto will be conjunct the US South Node. Ceres will be conjunct the US North Node because they're at 6 degrees. So, but Pluto will conjunct the South Node exactly on March the 18th, June the 30th of 27, and January 21st, 2028. So, again, it's a process, but that basket on June the 8th next year is just massive. And for the rebirthing, the renaissance, whatever you want to call it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we are at, so we're at the pivot point. All right, we've been
We are.
inching up toward it.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're blossoming into the new. We're still going to see a lot of the decay and the old and the stuff that makes
Mm-hmm.
us swear when we look at the news headlines. But
Yes.
where where that's going more and more into the past, and we're more and more into new ways of
Yeah.
doing things.
But it's not going to happen overnight. We've still got a few other things to shake out. As you mentioned, there's another, a configuration in 2028 and things like that. And we look back on the history of the US, the Constitution took a while to be written and developed, and then the
Hmm.
Bill of Rights was added, and so all these changes don't just happen on a day, but the rebirth is happening.
Yeah, we're already into it. All right. That's the point I'm
Mhm,
trying to make. We're not
mhm.
waiting for it to happen. It's already happening. So
Yeah.
I invite everyone to look for more and more evidence of this. Watch for it in the
Mhm,
news, watch for it in your own life, watch for it in groups of people, and
mhm.
use that weird, maybe it was self-aggrandizing, scaling to the top of the Empire State Building. Empire symbolism is so important.
Yeah.
And a banner about the power of love, and two people forging a union up there. That is so symbolic.
It is.
Look for more of that.
Yeah, definitely. So I hope you enjoyed kind of our recap and big picture of where we're going, because as we said right at the start, we're going to be okay. I know it doesn't always feel like it, but we are. So have it. Try and enjoy your force. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I won't be watching anything that's happening over there, but I'll be enjoying it here. So, so peace out, everybody.